One person who got excited was the new president of RKO, George Schaefer, who'd taken over in December 1938. The first thing he did was to revive the system of independent production units introduced by David O. Selznick. The Mercury Theatre, Orson Welles' company, seemed an eligible candidate, the only drawback being they'd never made a film. But if the young Welles could cause such a stir with a radio broadcast, what couldn't he do once he learned to make a movie? In 1942, Orson Welles' career as a Hollywood producer, director, writer came to a spectacular end with the South American fiasco of It's All True. He'd been at RKO for only 3 years, and in that time had made 2 remarkable pictures. The magnificent Ambersons, which was finally taken out of his hands by the studio, and before that, his first picture, Citizen Kane.
Pages 83 to 142.
Citizen Kane is an investigation into a man's life. The investigator was played by William Allen, one of Orson Welles' Mercury actors. Like Welles himself, all the Mercury players had done radio and theater, but they'd never been near a film studio.
Hollywood had a small-town atmosphere. There was a Hollywood Hotel, a few landmarks, but the studios were very prominent. Most of them were right in Hollywood then. I remember driving up to RKO, there's all this stucco buildings through archways and walking into this magical land, and it was magical, I must say. People walking around just like you see today with all different costumes and excitement. And we were excited. We had a beautiful suite of offices, and I don't think any of us realized what an impact we were making on the place, because we were a bunch of 22, 23-year-old kids, really. And we had moved in and taken over this studio, and all these people were looking around wondering who the hell we were and what did we think we were going to be doing.
Citizen Kane wasn't Welles' first project at RKO. Initially, he hoped to make Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, but the size of the budget scared the studio off. Next, Welles settled on C. Day Lewis's spy thriller, The Smiler with the Knife. This project was abandoned too, officially because it was said to have proved impossible to cast. But Welles had probably sensed that the material was not sufficiently momentous for his motion picture debut. Throughout this difficult gestation period, he had the services of a contract researcher, Miriam Geiger, to supply any information about how films were actually made.
To make clearer to him what a camera angle was, and I went to the cutting department and got several kinds of shots of film, 35 millimeter of film, and I cut a hole of their size in a sheet of paper and pasted them on, and underneath I described what it was to identify the place that the film was going to take place in. I just held the paper up in front of him through against a light, and he could see on the frame what it was. Long shot of the country, the city, the place where you might want your film to begin. A long, wide view, preferably with a recognizable landmark. This is medium shot. It's used to establish a closer view of the environment important to your story. For example, the exterior of a house. An office building, maybe a shop. This is a medium close shot. It might be the interior of an office in the building shown in the previous shot, or the dining room or living room of a house.
That's late, but we did it.
Here, there might be a group of people walking, eating, laughing, in order to establish a few or all of those who may be important to the story.
No, there's something I've got to get into this paper besides pictures and print. I've got to make the New York Enquirer as important to New York as the gas in that light.
What are you going to do, Charlie?
Declaration of Principles. Don't smile, Jedediah. Got it all written out. Decoration principles. You don't want to make...
Close-up. This is a closer, clearer view of perhaps 2 or 3 of the people in the medium close shot. The hero or heroine having a conversation or an argument important to them, and so probably important to the story.
I run a couple of newspapers. What do you do?
Me?
Mm-hmm. How old did you say you were?
Oh, I didn't say.
I didn't think you did. If you had, I wouldn't have asked you, because I would have remembered. How old?
Pretty old.
How old?
22 in August.
This is a very large close-up.
Rosebud.
Did he not know what a medium shot was, a close shot?
No, I don't think he did. I'm not quite sure about this, but the way he received this idea seemed to me was of help to him, so I assumed that he was learning the elementals of the physical way of shooting a film.
As Citizen Kane began to take shape, RKO assigned a unit art director, Perry Ferguson, to the project. These storyboards were produced by Ferguson, and clearly, Wells followed them very closely in the shooting of Kane. In June 1939, the third part of the creative team arrived in the shape of the celebrated cinematographer Gregg Toland. Wells had always wanted Toland on the project. He'd heard of his flamboyance, his originality, and of his reputation as the fastest cameraman alive. Toland had previously made his mark with the maverick Hollywood directors, Wyler, Ford, and Hawks. And he made it known that he'd like to work with a talented and unorthodox newcomer. His influence on Wells and on Kane was decisive. Sequences began to be designed to display Toland's unconventional shooting angles and virtuoso camera movements.
Not now. I can remember when they'd wait all day. If Mr. Kane says.
Nativity.
You better get going.
Wyatt Florence, 1921.
Right next. Take a picture of that.
Hey, can we come down?
How much do you think all this is worth, Mr. Thompson?
Millions? Anybody wants it?
Well, at least he brought all this stuff to America.
What's that? Another Venus. $25,000. That's a lot of money to pay for a dame without a head.
The banks are out the block then, huh?
Oh, I don't know.
This is the old RKO scene dock. And still here, astonishingly, are the statues that Orson Welles used as Kane's private art collection, the loot of the world. It only took Welles a few months to master the cinematic technique that you've seen in that magnificent crane shot in the Great Hall of Xanadu. If we go back to it, you will also see how he brought with him from his days in radio and theater the practice of overlapping conversations and choreographing his actors in a totally fresh and unconventional way.
Crow, huh?
Hey, look, a jigsaw puzzle.
We got a lot of those.
Burmese temple and 3 Spanish ceilings down the hall.
Yeah, all in crates.
Oliver Scott's castle over there, but we haven't bothered to unwrap it yet.
I wonder, you put all this stuff together, palaces, paintings, toys, and everything. What would it spell? Charles Foster Kane?
Or Rosebud?